Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Adapting With. Today we are speaking with Ben and Aaron from Top Hat. How are you doing today, guys? Tell us a little about yourself.
I'm Ben, founder of Top Hat. I founded Top Hat while I was still in college in 2013.
I'm Aaron. I'm the creative director and partner at Top Hat, and I came on board at 2017. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Awesome. Good start. So just talk a little bit about both you since your partners in this, how it's been kind of directing and leading the agency in the time of COVID.
In general, Aaron and I are kind of like the yin and yang effect. So we balance each other out. I think during COVID, that's been good in terms of managing resources and direction, but also just making tough decisions on things to do both for clients and ourselves. But in general, it's not business as usual. It's been more business than usual, as I would say, where, everybody wants digital activations and we just so happen to look really smart with our industry choices. We didn't do it on purpose, but, beer, cannabis, CBD, those are all industries that shot straight up and we just happen to be there. So we've been extremely busy in terms of managing things and doing things during COVID.
Piggybacking off of what Ben said, we got some good opportunities just because of the industries we happen to be in. We were looking for hires in the design and content arena, and because things were shifting to remote work more and more frequently, we started entertaining positions in areas that we wouldn't usually, and it just so happened we had two applicants that we were really impressed by that are in St. Pete, Florida. So we recognize that as an opportunity to expand into a second market with a sort of a plan to mirror our office structure that we have in Pittsburgh in St. Pete, Florida. So, obviously there's things that are challenging with remote work. I think that there's a lot of people who are inclined to be like, oh, this is great in a way because long-term that means that we're going to, like, people are going to realize that it's okay to work from home and you don't need this big office, you don't need all this overhead. But in a lot of ways, I feel the opposite in some respects, because I think there is a lot to that, like personal, seeing the actual people that you're talking to. It helps like the feedback feel a lot more personal. It helps the interactions and just the overall work vibe feel like more positive day to day. It's less of a slog. You aren't just in this room by yourself. Like, you can take breaks together and relax. And there's a lot to that I think is really important to a company culture.
And we also have ping pong in the office, which is always a good icebreaker.
What was just interesting maybe to dive into is kind of the yin and yang that you talked about with your two relationships in particular. So like, describe how you balance each other out and how that is a benefit, obviously not just to yourselves, but running your business, and how maybe that's even worked even better or worse in, being remote more often than not.
Yeah, I tend to have a lot more red line emotions, I would say. And it's really funny the way it actually plays out. I'm usually the one who's a little bit more high powered, high energy, extroverted, sort of redlining. And whenever I'm like peaking out, Aaron's like, okay, well, here's what we should actually do. And it works out.
Yeah, I think sort of like the thread that holds that together and makes that, I think, a lot more cohesive than it sounds, a lot more functional than it sounds. Like, saying that it's the total opposite is just, I think, like, not just us, but everyone on the team. It's understanding that, everyone's working hard. Everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish, and we understand that, like, critiques of each other's ideas and thoughts are, not a personal thing, and I don't think they've ever really been taken personally. So
absolutely. And speaking of that, obviously, you mentioned this company culture, keeping that communication up is obviously vitally important, especially for what you guys do. How have you managed that, being more remote and dealing with probably more flexibility that needs to happen, not just for your clients, but for the people that work for you and all that jazz?
the big thing internally is don't email me if you work for this company. I'm not going to read it. I don't want to see it. Emails for clients. So we're already on Slack. You know, it's been kind of challenging in some regards because, you know, like Aaron was saying, sometimes it's hard to feel the same emotions, and sometimes things get transcribed the wrong way and whatnot. But you know, we've done pretty well with Slack, and one of the things you have to do is be a little bit more open about work times and when people get stuff done. And you know, the 8 or even the 9 to 5 exists a little bit less than it used to. So being flexible, but also doing things like hopping on calls and, you know, periodic meetings, you know, as you can pull off. So we already had all the systems in place. In short, we'd be sitting at the same table together and we'd still be slacking each other. So it's nothing out of the norm. So it's just a little bit more of that than it used to be.
Outside of the day-to-day like things we've been doing, like made it a point to do like bi-weekly meetings where like we do get everyone face to face and you know, just hear what everyone's up to.
Via Zoom.
Yeah, via Zoom. You know, still get a sense of like what's going on with people's lives outside of work, and get everyone up to speed on what everyone's doing. The management standpoint and the hours, you just need to have like trust in the people that you're working with and making the appropriate concessions whenever life gets in the way of different things. So
I think the bi-weekly meetings was a big thing that just helped, like Aaron said. I mean, other than that, for us, it's just been trying to deal with the overflow of still, you know, a year or more later, we are completely bursting at the seams. We never get to the end of the hopper. There's always 20,000 things to do. So I think for us, we're still trying to dig out of the surplus of demand and work. And that's probably the biggest challenge that we live in day to day, is like, you look up, it's 4:30 and you're like, oh man, I still have 20 things I have to get done today. Dang it, you know.
Was the expansion in St. Petersburg that happened before COVID, or was that during this time as well?
But yeah, we've been hiring and pretty consistently since the start. And I mean, I feel like we could hire a new person every day, it seems like. And the temptation is just, you know, to not do that and to try to find the right people and to find ways to be more effective. But yeah, we probably hired, let's see, I want to say like 4 or 5 people between like, you know, like 1099 contractors that are basically full-time and, you know, W-2 employees. So
what's kind of interesting with that is how much you can rabbit hole when you're just trying to serve a specific need for a specific client. Doing a daily newsletter could really benefit this client for these reasons. And like once you do that, it leads to photo needs, it leads to content needs, it leads to like ad spend needs. The way that Ben and I are, it just like leads to all these other ideas. Like, well, we can do this now. Like, maybe we need to start like 4 more business entities that we can take advantage of those with. So
yeah, pretty much.
In that spirit of, you know, the hiring 4 or 5 people, you know, the St. Peter's thing starting, like, how did you manage that remotely? What was the onboarding process like? Was there anything that you kind of found unique about it, or, you know, challenging about it?
I'd say not really, to be honest. I mean, and that's all because we just hired the right people. The 2 people we have down in St. Pete doing the essentials really well. Like, we have a digital culture code. We sent it to them. We did onboarding via Zoom, just kind of, you know, made sure that the critique was a lot of hand holding and things like that right away. And now it's just like, how did we ever exist without these guys? You know, so, you know, the industry in which we're in, I see all these really generic postings for like account manager and whatever. And I just can't imagine a world where people hire just an account manager, because really what it comes down to is like all the agencies are pretty much the same in terms of process, and they're getting more similar, but it really comes down to the talent. So starting with Aaron and I, the way we think, who we are, you can't replace that. And same with everybody else. If you want to recreate the magic we have, you have to poach the team. You you have to poach the mentality and the philosophy. So for us, it's a very talent driven move, and we picked the right talent, luckily. And so it was, a lot easier than getting some bad talent, which just a bad egg in the bunch is, you're going to feel that, you're going to smell that real quick.
For the time being, we're focused on trying to be an aspirational agency for people who, go into the field, like look at the work and say like, oh, I'd really like to be part of that. And then like it becomes attainable at a certain level. And it's not just talent, obviously. It comes down to how you fit in with the needs and like what exists around in the team in any agency setting. But I think that's the big part of it. Like those guys work independently and, bring things to the table that existing team members don't. And that's always important whenever you're expanding. And
what's worked best for you during this year?
We're just trying to do the best work we can. And that's not a profitable decision by any means, where we will literally, respectfully debate with a client about, hey, you know what, that is a really bad idea. And it's not popular, it's not profitable. But I think really what we do best and what we continue to do best is trying to guide people to the most logical, research-backed, non-emotional decision they can possibly do. That's a leadership decision. That's something that, again, the yin and yang, when I'm ready to give up on something, Aaron's ready to keep fighting. And when he's ready to give up, I'm ready to keep fighting. And so we always try to advocate for the most compelling, best solution. The
right way to do it, as best as I can tell, is to always approach things from like, hey, okay, I need to figure out what there's probably a problem that you're addressing with this feedback. Like you're solving something in your head by doing this, and it's my job to figure out what you're actually trying to fix, and then I'll figure out how to fix it and come back to you with that.
You spoke about, your beer and cannabis and CBD clients. What were they facing when this all started, and kind of how did you help them navigate through that?
Right before, it was, everybody was doing pretty well. It was coming down to making the right, sort of beer, having packaging that stands out, brand positioning that stands out. And then it was all about, we need as much packaging as we can possibly get. We need digital systems to sell this stuff as much as we possibly can. We need innovative things that convert tap rooms into to-go and dispensaries into, curbside and so forth and so on. And now it's kind of back to the way it was. It's like now people are starting to get really competitive again, where they went through this period of, we put it all in the package, and it's still kind of happening, just like falling down the rabbit hole in these like super nuanced niche skill sets that are very different. And again, that's like partnership brokering. It's like researching and inventing products. It's like analyzing market trends and all this stuff. But we've done a lot of different stuff, and it kind of all happened because of the needs that we were presented with and the way that we had to shift. And those are things that transformed our business in terms of like what we can bring to the table.
And that, on that kind of note too, where do you see the industry going in the next like 5 years?
I feel like the agency versus in-house route goes in and out quite a bit. And if anything, I think about it in terms of how do you stay relevant as an agency, show people like why there is value in working with an agency and hiring out an agency versus bringing this staff in-house, and like how many different types of resources that avails you of.
I from my experience of the industry, it's very historical. Right now, I think we've seen a lot of people get bought up either by necessity, and then we've seen a lot of people break away because they didn't have jobs, and so they're just like, I'm gonna go do this on my own. So I think you're seeing a little bit of a fracturing of like a historical model. So I think things always kind of return to the historical average of what they have been. And I think short of like more digital being offered from more agencies and more of an emphasis, as well as like to go and packaging like that, I think it's going to be the same old before we know it. Unless, the pandemic continues, then the industry will just stay exactly as it is right now and probably mutate a little bit differently than we could expect. But I'd predict everything kind of just returns to historical trends and ebbs, flows, fractures, and digital just continues trajectorying a little bit faster than it did.
Ben and Aaron, thank you so much for your time today and giving us some wonderful insights. We got more episodes coming soon, so stay tuned, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.